Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today's guest is Alex Frum. Alex is a FedEx linehaul contractor. This is his second time on the show. Check out episode 20 to hear how he got into the business. Today, we're diving into all things safety, and you won't want to miss his tips on getting decals off your trucks. Let's jump into the interview.
This episode is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. AP Equipment Financing can bring you the best deals on step vans, panel vans, cutaways, and more, deliver them straight to your facility, and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description to this episode or visit apfinancing.com.
Alex, welcome back to Routing for Success.
Thank you, Emily. It's good to be here.
Appreciate you coming. So wanted to start off a little bit today with some housekeeping items. We've been talking a lot on the show about the merger with Express. So can you tell me what you've been doing to get ready for your responsibilities changing over to the Express DOT?
Sure. Line haul's a little bit different from the P&D side. I don't think it's going to have as great of an impact on the line haul operations, at least near term. Long term, that's a bigger question for how FedEx wants to utilize line haul operations. The biggest thing is that I've been converting all my tractors over to the new logos that we have to have in place and earning the $100 incentive to do that for every tractor. So that's putting Federal Express Corporation on my doors, and then putting the new DOT number as well on all my tractors ahead of June 1st. Anecdotally, I'm a little bit nervous about a couple things, and I'm waiting. I've asked questions of FedEx, and they're researching it on their end. I expect that we will have to get new cap cards or registration cards. All our cap cards currently say that that the base plates that we have on our tractors are for FedEx Ground and not for Federal Express Corporation. And then by extension, all our insurance policies that we have in place right now are, we have a additional insured of FedEx Ground and not Federal Express Corporation. So I imagine come June 1st or in the near term, we're going to get instructions from FedEx that we have to change over all our insurance cards for our non-trucking and our physical damage liability insurance policies. And then I think for FedEx, we will actually have to download new insurance cards from them, which you can do on MGB, that specifically state that our trucking liability and our trucking liability policies are for Federal Express Corporation now and not FedEx Ground package systems.
Okay, so for your line haul business, you've been changing your logos. Do you have any heat gun tips? I've been seeing some good ones.
Sure. So as opposed to a lot of other contractors who've been using heat guns, we haven't had really great success with it. We did buy a heat gun from Amazon and tried it on our tractors, and then noticed the paint was bubbling and we weren't getting a very clean surface. So we actually returned the heat gun, and we've been switching to using an eraser. So it's a large, I don't even know what it's made out of. It's like eraser material, whatever that stuff is, like some kind of rubber that you see on the back of a pencil. But imagine that it's a wheel this big that you put on the end of an impact wrench or a drill that you just spins at high powers and erases off the decal. So we've been doing that and have had a lot of success. And so
Wow.
as of yesterday, I think out of my 31 tractors, I have 29 of them done. Just waiting for some dry weather to get my last two tractors. And that's been the biggest impediment so far for me getting everything turned in. It's just the amount of rain that has been inundating, I want to say, the Ohio Valley, Mississippi Valley corridor of late.
Alex, some contractors that I work with buy used trucks that wear, say, red, and they have them wrapped. Do you know if they use the magic eraser, if it will pull off the wrap as well as the decal?
I don't know. I think you should be okay, because if you're still trying to use the heat gun, you're going to run into the same problems with like the paint bubbling or the wrap bubbling in that situation. So I think that if you get your tractor wrapped, I think the eraser might be the best bet in that situation. especially if you don't really kind of grind it into the door panel, but you just do it softly and let it spin there and just let it erase over time. I mean, if you think about it, like when we were kids, like if you really kind of took that eraser and really rubbed really hard, you might like rip the paper. But if you did it nice and lightly, I mean, it worked just as well, and didn't do any damage to the paper. So it's the same kind of concept. And I actually think it's like the same kind of material. It's just kind of crazy. I could pull it up on my phone. We order them. God, we probably do it every. We probably order two new erasers every 6 months because when the numbers start to chip off on the hoods, well, every single time you go through a QEI, FedEx will give you a hard time if you have a number missing from your, it can't be 100 blank, 001. They want to have this, the 6-digit number up there. So, or the 6-digit number. So they'll give you a hard time if you don't. So we'll erase them off and put new numbers on them quite often. We got in trouble recently because we put Alpha Kilo stickers on all our trucks, and they didn't think they were, they thought they were tasteful. They just wanted them in a different location. So we had to erase all our stickers off and put them into a different location, but it's fine. My drivers actually like having the Alpha Kilo stickers on. It goes into the whole thing about how we're as a company, we try to take care of our drivers. And so one of the things we do is like all our safety vests actually say Alpha Kilo Logistics on the back of them. All my drivers actually have t-shirts or sweatshirts, pullovers, zippered hoodies, and even raincoats and snow jackets that are high vis, with the silver reflective material, and they're usually yellow, and then they all say Alpha Kilo Logistics on the back. So it's the idea of just trying to create pride and take pride in your company. And it seems my drivers really appreciate it. So, all those kind of things to try to make a better experience for your drivers.
I love that.
Do you give those when they first start with you, or is there a timeline of 3 months or whatever when you start to give them hats and pullovers?
So I wait 30 days for any of the FedEx t-shirts that FedEx encourages us to give them. So those are the purple and black ones with a little bit of high vis material, but they're not really safety oriented. The stuff that I give out to my drivers, I do on an annual basis during Truck Driver Appreciation Week. So it's usually I'm actually about to place an order right now. I'm doing bomber jackets for all my drivers. And we're going to do it, and we'll hand them out in August during Truck Driver Appreciation Week. So it goes along with, like, I give hats to my drivers or water bottles. I don't happen to have any of them. Oh, here's one of my water bottles. So, in the past, I've done water bottles that look
Those are cool.
Oh, that's a sick logo.
We've done hats. We've done backpacks. Anything that I can think of that makes sense for the drivers to utilize on a daily basis. One of them asked me to give them big gulp coffee mugs. Been trying to hold off on that because, I'm trying to get my drivers to be healthier and trying to encourage them not to drink as much caffeine as they do. So,
those are really cool gifts.
yeah, well, thank you. My drivers seem to appreciate them. One other thing that we do, and this is actually, I can't take credit for it, but I think you guys know Mike Schuyler from Skyco Distribution. So he actually picks up, he has a spot for a company called Blue Star or Nebraska Star Beef, I think it's called. And so they're kind of like an Omaha Steaks, but they're a FedEx customer. He's actually the contractor that, spots a trailer there and picks up beef from them on a regular basis. And so every year after peak, I buy 4 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of sirloin steaks and give those out to all my drivers.
That's so fun. So obviously that is amazing for driver retention. I am going to segue into another topic that I wanted to talk about today, which is incentives for safety.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do for incentives for safety side of things?
Sure. So I go back to the old school when we used to get safety bonuses from FedEx, which was roughly, I think, 3.7 cents per mile. I converted that over just to a standard $200 per month safety bonus. So my drivers receive a $200 monthly safety bonus for doing a number of different things. One, completing their safety training on time. And so they have to complete their safety training in my company by the 25th of every month. So that gives us a couple day leeway to kind of round up the stragglers and make sure that they complete their safety training. Also in my company, we have a company policy where if you don't complete your safety training by the end of the month, you actually don't get dispatched the following month until you've completed your safety training. So that's one. So they get a $200 safety bonus if they complete their safety training on time and then follow all the rules of the company and don't have any safety violations. And so it's a three-part, it's a kind of a carrot and a stick kind of method. I use Safety Forward as my safety video provider. And then we do a weekly safety message that comes from me. And it can be anything from hours of service to pre-trip and post-trip inspections, side swipes, any kind of thing that's the topic. Like last week, my topic happened to be logging out of your HOS device, your ELD, and then making sure that the following morning you recertify and annotate and correct your previous day logs. This week, I haven't come up with one yet, but it's probably going to be side swipes. I reiterate side swipes quite frequently because that's the most common type of accident in the line haul space. And so I've really been trying to remove or reduce the number of side swipes in my business alone. We do approximately about 4 million miles a year. And knock on wood, we haven't had, since we started this whole initiative to really focus on side swipes and remove the risk of side swipes, we haven't had a side swipe incident in now 15 months. So it's been working. And part of that's also adopting new technology. So one of the things we've been doing is upgrading our fleet. And when you upgrade your fleet, you get to take advantage of the newest technology that's out there. And we've been making sure that all our tractors come equipped with what they call blind spotter, or I think it's called Blind Spotter under Bendix. In Detroit, it's part of the Detroit Assurance Program. And so what it literally is a hockey puck that goes on the side of your vehicle and tells you if there's a vehicle in your blind spot. And so it gives you an audio and a visual notification in the cab saying that there's a vehicle in your blind spot. Do not try to move into that lane.
Is that separate from the FCAM, forward collision and mitigation system?
Yeah, so it's a different system. It's part under Detroit, which is Freightliner. It's part of that whole encompassing Detroit Assurance Program, which is forward collision avoidance and mitigation, your FCAM, your forward collision warning system. You have your blind spotter, you have your lane keep assist now, and then you have your lane departure warning, so that if you are trying to move into a different lane without signaling, it gives you like the rumble seat, or gives you a signal. And then it also has, they're starting to get some additional technology programs with it. So if you're in cruise control mode, the vehicle with Freightliner will make sure that you maintain the FMCSA recommended gap between you and the vehicle in front of you. Now, some drivers really like that, because it kind of takes off a lot of the thought process and you're always maintaining the right appropriate gap. And then with the forward collision avoidance and mitigation system, when in conjunction with that cruise control, what you're getting is that the vehicle will actually slow itself down and come to a complete stop if you're in that cruise control mode and it identifies the vehicles in front of it are slowing down. Now, some of my other drivers don't like it because all of a sudden you'll have somebody going 65 in the lane, and then they slow down to 55. Well, the next thing you know, all of a sudden you're going 55 because it's slow to maintain that gap between you and the vehicle in front of you. But I try to encourage as many of my drivers to use the cruise control as possible, because that's also how you get the most fuel efficiency in your vehicle.
If trucks don't already have the blind spotter, are they addable like FCAM is addable?
Yeah, so depending on how old the vehicle is, you can, I think if it is capable to receive the FCAM conversion kit, then you can get a blind spotter or a side radar kit as well. You just have to talk to your the dealer and order it. If it's from Bendix, I believe it's about $1,500. I don't know what it is with Freightliner because all my Freightliner trucks have come equipped with it, but I have actually added the Bendix system to some of my Kenworths. Yeah, and and I don't have I have a preference on which OEM I utilize, but that's not necessarily a function of like, I think that Freightliner is more trustworthy than Kenworth or Volvo. It's just that for me and my systems, I've decided to try to go to one unified tractor as much as possible, mostly because of the relationships I happen to have in place with dealers and mechanics who can work on Detroit systems. And that's really just, yeah.
I know you have a lot of passion for safety in your business. And I've heard you talk about, the blind spotter on all of your trucks. Does that help with your safety score? Or is that just something that you do because you believe it enhances your business?
So yes and no is the complicated answer, because your safety score is not just a function of how many accidents you have. Your safety score is also a function of it's multiple components, right? It's how many DOT preventable and non-preventable accidents you have. And in the last, I want to say in the last year, I've had 2 preventable non-DOT reportable accidents. Okay. Actually, I take it back. I've had 1 accident and I had 1, they don't call it an accident. They call it, FedEx doesn't call it an accident. They call it like physical damage. I happened to back into, or one of my drivers happened to back into one of the barriers at FedEx. And so that was considered, it's categorized something differently as an accident. But so you have those, then you have your DOT recordable, preventable accidents, which is the biggest penalty you can get. Then you have like a disconnect. That's, a type of accident, but it's lower tiered.
What is a
and
disconnect? Can you explain that?
So it can be anything from you failing to hook up properly and locking your jaws in place around the trailer. And when you do your tug test or when you pull away, the trailer is not connected to the tractor and so it falls to the ground. Or you fail to connect your safety chains and your pintle hook properly on the dolly. And so when you're driving down the road, which is extremely dangerous, your dolly comes unhooked, and all of a sudden you have this trailer just running down the highway freely, which is those are called disconnects. And then you can have CSA violations. Okay, and so CSA violations, FedEx puts into safety, even though a lot of the CSA violations that contractors incur necessarily aren't safety issues, they're more maintenance issues. Or they might be hours of service issues, but they have an impact on your safety score. And there's different tierings and different rate. If you have a CSA violation, whether or not it's a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 CSA violation, FedEx treats them all the same. And so it's kind of frustrating for me because like I take great pride in the fact that we've driven 4 million miles and have had 1 accident and one damage to a piece of infrastructure in a FedEx facility. And I've struggled to improve my safety score because I've had so many CSA violations. And part of my CSA violations is not a function of necessarily having bad rules and procedures in my company. It's just the fact that if you ask any trucker or any truck driver, if you go into a DOT if you go into a DOT inspection site, if they want to, they can assess your tractor for something. They can always find something wrong with your tractor. And so what we've worked on really hard recently is training our drivers to have a positive experience as possible with a DOT officer in an inspection site. So we go through mock inspections. And so what we do is we train our drivers on how to navigate a situation that is extremely stressful for them, especially for my African-American drivers. Seeing a DOT officer and being pulled over for them is a very, very stressful event. And so we work on, okay, how do you speak to the officer? How are you being respectful? What kind of language are you using? Using, appropriate English, saying yes, sir, or no, sir, or calling them officer this or officer that, are the kind of things that sets the ground rules or the sets the environment appropriately, that the DOT officer is going to be positive with you. And then we work through, teaching our drivers how to provide the ELD device. So we've tested all our vehicles to make sure that we can grab the ELD device, and we use Omnitrax, out of its cradle and navigate it across the driver's body and hang it out the door so the DOT officer can access the Omnitrax personally himself. And that alleviates the stress of trying to figure out how to navigate and how to send the hours of service logs to the DOT officer. In this environment where you can just hand the actual system over to the DOT officer, then they handle that situation themselves.
I had a contractor ask me the other day for advice on how you can monitor your, like he used lytics, for example. When you're monitoring your drivers, when you have a triggering event, can you offer any suggestions on how to understand what is triggering the event, how to determine how to respond to it, and how it's affecting your KIs?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, right? So the triggering event is generally triggered by something that causes the vehicle to be destabilized. Okay, so I can sit there and be driving along with my vehicle, and as long as I'm just driving, going north south, and I'm looking like this, the camera doesn't know if I have a camera, a phone sitting in my lap. But if the vehicle is starting to move out of the lanes and the vehicle recognizes that you're moving out of the lanes, or if you're getting sudden braking and stuff like that, or you happen to hit a big bump, and this is what triggers the camera more often than not, is a big bump that the tractor goes over. Then you get a G-force destabilization, and then it starts recording and looking at you to try to figure out, okay, what caused that situation? And if it sees you kind of driving like this, hey, I got both my hands up in the air, then it's going to trigger something. Okay, so that's what's going to cause. And then it's going to go through any of a number of different metrics that it's looking for. It's looking for your seatbelt. It's making sure that you have only one ear covered if you're wearing a headset. It's making sure that your eyes are looking forward and facing the road and not distracted and looking somewhere else. That you have two hands on the wheel. But it's looking for realistically 4 different areas. It's making sure that you're driving the speed limit. You're maintaining your following distance, which is the FMCSA standards of what the following distance should be at a given speed. And that's a function of both time and space. It doesn't recognize conditions. And so if it's really rainy out there, you're obviously supposed to have a greater following distance, and it won't capture that. But it'll say the FMCSA standards there. And then it's going to go through, like, are you wearing a seatbelt? Are you distracted? Do you have your hands on the wheel? Do you have a handheld device? All those different kind of metrics. Okay, so then those are all the different things that that it's looking for once the camera's been triggered. Okay, and then from there, what are your KIs? Your KIs are based off of, how many events have you had, based off of the number of dispatches that you have in your entire fleet during a period of time. And our period of time is 1 month. Okay, and so then you have your different percentages, and I don't have them off the top of my head anymore. I used to know this kind of stuff, but we've actually worked so well on reducing the number of repeatable incidences that we're doing a much better job. The biggest one that we struggle with is following distance. And that a lot of that is, making sure that our drivers recognize that the vehicle is actually telling you when you're too close, and then listening to the vehicle, because you're going to get your forward collision warning or your FCAM or your lane departure warning. All those different systems are going to beep at you if you're getting too close. And lytics, nice enough as it is, actually tells you, also has a forward collision warning kind of system embedded in it, and will give you a triggering notification if you are closing in on a vehicle on your following distance. Now, it's not a perfect system, because if you're trying to pass a slower moving vehicle in front of you, one of the things that you need to do is you need to close and reduce that distance between you and the vehicle in front of you before you make the move into the next lane. So that is something that you have to monitor, and that's kind of the art form about lytics and coaching. But in general, I mean, what I experienced more often than not is one of two things. Either um, I'm getting flagged for my drivers not wearing their seatbelt when they're backing up to a trailer or to a dolly in the lot. And now that is actually not a triggerable event. You can actually dispute that with lytics and they'll remove it from your safety profile. Or the other one is the following distance. Now I don't know how ground cloud works, and I know that I believe Smart Witness is a totally different system as well. So I don't know. I think Smart Witness is actually a more sensitive system, and I think they have more triggers, and they monitor more driver behavior. But I've never used it, so I can't. That's just the impression I've gotten from talking to other contractors.
Are you
I really
able?
like. I know some contractors don't. They've gotten a lot better with their customer service, and I really appreciate and I find the website very user friendly.
Are you able to use your lytics data to go to the insurance company and negotiate for lower insurance rates?
I have really low insurance rates, so I don't try to. I do
Nice.
choose my. I have, I've happened to have a good insurance broker for years, but I will say this: one of the things I really like about lytics, especially in the winter months, is you have the ability to go to a functionality on lytics, and you can actually see forward camera of every tractor that's using lytics in the country. And so, if you're worried about your truck on I-70 or I-80, or driving potentially into a snowstorm, you can go find a tractor that's actually on that highway right now and see what the conditions are, and then tell your driver, "Hey, it's getting nasty. Why don't you wait out the storm here in Lenexa?"
Is that
Or,
live data?
yeah, it's live.
Wow.
It's amazing. We use it all the time now. Once Lytics rolled it out this past winter, we've been using it quite frequently, and it's been great. We've diverted tractors from winter storms on I-80 and I-70, got them down to I-10 or I-40. We've used it, when we're driving up to Chicago during winter storms. It's been a real life. I mean, I don't want to call it a lifesaver, but I think it's another way of using the systems and the technology we have to make your operation safer. And if you can call FedEx and say, "Hey, I got data showing me that the conditions are really dangerous going into Chicago from Indianapolis. Can I divert into Lafayette, Greenwood, so and so?" FedEx is going to work with you, because at the end of the day, they can, FedEx does not have the right to tell you to do something that's unsafe. It's in the contract. It's in the contract. It's protected.
How cautious are you when it comes to winter driving?
I don't
What's your
ever I don't ever dispatch my drivers if I think there's a risk of them getting into an accident. It's just not worth it. I mean,
absolutely.
FedEx will not. FedEx doesn't give you an award for, delivering the set of packages in the midst of a blizzard. They're going to be like, "Okay, great job. Go back and home." But they will come down on you hard if you get into an accident during that winter storm. So it's just not worth it. The indemnification, the financial liabilities, and the damage to your company. I learned about 3 years ago that it's never worth it. And so I will always decline to run. And it's funny because you'll call up, FedEx will be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing with your Chicago run or whatever?" And I'll be like, "We're not running them today." "Well, do you have anybody else running?" "No, I just told you we're taking a safety decline. We're not running, and we're taking a weather decline. We're not running." "Okay, we'll find somebody else to run it." I'm like, "Go ahead." It's too dangerous. But they
Do
always
they
find,
typically, I was going to say, do they typically find someone?
there's always somebody out there that thinks that, FedEx is going to reward them by, driving through, nasty weather, but it's just never risky. It's never, there's no incentive to it. It's too risky. It's too dangerous. And it can harm your company too easily. Like I had an incident, I want to say in 2021 or 2022. I had two tractors who were trying to make it. A storm came up to them really, really late. It was a bluebird day, and then all of a sudden, like between two exits, and it was about a 40-mile stretch of road between two exits. They came upon a, like, just terrible wind and massive snow gusts coming across, and just, it wasn't snow coming down, it was snow blowing across the highway. And both tractors reduced their speeds to 5 miles an hour, but the conditions were so dangerous on this highway that they both ended up driving off the road because they couldn't see the road anymore. And I had made a case to FedEx that we were trying to progress our loads to the next safest point, because it's unsafe to actually, it's a DOT violation to actually stop on a highway. And so we were trying to progress to the next exit. And FedEx said, nope, these are both preventable. You shouldn't have been on the road in the first place, and assessed me with 2 accidents. And, ever since then, I've just said, it's just not worth it.
So we're talking a lot about safety right now and how to prevent accidents. When you do have a driver that is consistently committing safety violations, how do you correct that behavior?
So if he's not responding to remedial training, I get rid of the driver. It's just not worth it. I'll rather take the hit to my availability score than take the risk of a driver doing damage to a $150,000 tractor, or incurring something somewhere between a $2,500 and a $75,000 fine from FedEx. It's just not worth it. So, I've had to learn that lesson the hard way. It's just never worth it to your business to take that risk. But so remedial training. So we start off with counseling. We have them watch the video of what they did. If they don't do it, if they don't correct them action, we'll assign additional training. If that doesn't work, we'll do a right seat ride with one of my managers. And if at that point they're continuing to do it, then it's time for us to let them go and move on to somebody else.
What is
and right now, we do it, we put it in writing. We'll do it, professionally. We'll let them know that, you've had 3 safety violations in the past X amount of time. You get one more, and, we are going to be forced to let you go. And then he'll probably find a job with another contractor tomorrow. It's just how it is. But, at least he's not taking I'm not taking the risk of having damages to my company, or my business. And safety is so important. We just have this metals program right now, right? So we just rolled out metals for line haul, which is totally different. And I'm not sure how effective it is for line haul, but it's 45% of the score is based off of your safety rating or your SRS score. And then the rest of it's a mix of availability and service. So safety is the biggest driver of what your metals performance is. And you can't bid on a run if you're a bronze. And if you are safety 1, or tier 1, or maybe even tier 2, you're more than likely going to be bronze. I think I'm right now, today is the 16th, so I can probably find out. I think I'm tier 4 and I'm still silver. I'm silver trending silver, whatever that means. But
so safety makes up 45%. What makes up the other 55%?
So I think your service score counts for 35%, and then 20% is your availability. The other way around. Availability is 35% and 20% is service. So availability is the number of declines you take. So how often are you providing service to FedEx? FedEx allocates you 7 points per week based off of your availability every day. You take a decline, then you have 6 points out of the 7 possible. So the max number of points you can get in any year other than a leap year is 365 points. The max number of declines you can take on a solo run, and a dedicated solo run in any year is 36 and a half. If you drop below 90%, then you're going to be requested to provide an opportunity to cure and improve your availability. If you take any additional declines after that within a 45-day period, if you take any additional declines during that period, until you get your availability score back above 90%, FedEx has the right under the contract to take that run away from you. If it's an unassigned, you can go to 85%. So 85% of 365 is like 40. It's 50 52 declines, I think, or maybe 46 declines. So,
And does a weather decline, as we spoke about earlier in this conversation, does that count towards your overall decline, or is that an acceptable
no
reason?
safety declines are never, they can never cause you to take a decline for that. So, um, under the contract, weather declines or hours of service issues. So say you have a tractor that's coming back from a run and it gets held up for some reason, and you have an hours of service, they can't get their 10-hour reset, or they've run out of time and they're laying their 10 to come back. You can't get a service failure for that, nor can you take a decline the next day. And so that's something to just understand. Like, the hours of service are, after safety, hours of service are probably the second most important metric that FedEx will evaluate you on. And they'll put drivers out of service if they can't, maintain their hours of service and execute it correctly.
You had mentioned tractor points as well, and you had shared with us there was some delays in assigning tractor points this spring. Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about what caused that and what the impact it's having?
I don't know what caused it. Typically, we get our tractor points based off of incentives that we achieve during peak. And peak typically runs from the first Saturday in November all the way through the first Friday in January, unless it's a New Year's, then it'll be the following Friday. So if you achieve different incentives, you can get 10 points per tractor that's on your Schedule A1. And then there's different grades of the incentives, so you can get 15, 20, or 30 points for achieving even higher incentives. But then all your points are made available to you usually at the end of January or early February. And typically we've had a month to allocate those points how we wanted to across, your tractors that are on your Schedule A1. But this year they made an announcement that they were extending that process from March all the way out through May. I don't know why, but what it does is it typically this is going to slow down the process for posting of runs for growth opportunities for CGOs, because FedEx doesn't want any contractor to have an advantage. They want all the points allocated. So any runs that are potentially going to be posted as growth opportunities are going to, or for assignment, so converting a temporary dedicated run into a dedicated run, are probably not going to occur until after those occur, and that's May 18th this year.
May 18th. Okay.
But they haven't said why. I imagine it was some computer snafu of some sort. Yeah.
Well, I think there's about 12 more things that I wanted to cover with you today, Alex, but we are kind of running up on time here. I did want to mention that you did a full TSPA contract review, and we're going to link that YouTube video in case anybody wants to go through the entire thing, because that was incredibly detailed and awesome. So I wanted to share that resource for anybody that's interested.
Well, I really appreciate it. I was really worried that it was boring, and I was kind of like, talking about like, this is the contract, and I was sounding like a VCR recording or something like that. Myself, Jake, I doubt you actually know what a VCR is, but it's this in the
I had a
80s.
VCR. You rewind it.
Yeah, and the instructions were like made, like you had to like translate it from Greek into Latin and then into English to actually understand the instructions. And so it was really painful. And like looking at the TSPA and different schedules of it can be just as painful. I will say this though, every contractor has to read Schedule A. Okay, that's governs your runs, how runs are awarded, and how your runs can be taken away. And every contractor should take Schedule E and the do's and do nots, and what are the disqualifying functions that a driver can be penalized for, and put those into your employee handbook. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. You need to understand, hey, if you get into an accident, if you get into 2 accidents, if you get into 3 accidents, if you bring a weapon on site, if you get caught with drugs, if you do any of these do nots, this is what it means to your ability to be a driver for FedEx. And this is what it means what are the impacts on your contract. And so Schedule A, Schedule E, everybody should read that. The rest of it, Schedule B is, talks about what your vehicles are and what your statement of lease is. Schedule C is going to talk about how you get paid. And yeah, everybody should know how they get paid, but you should read Schedule A and Schedule E backwards and forwards. So.
And in case I didn't want to, are you still offering consulting services? If I were to say, Alex, I want you to read it for me.
Yes, I do. I don't. I've joined Route Consultants, so I do a podcast every other week with Route Consultants, and then along with that, I've recorded a number of videos. I think it's about 40 hours worth of material about what it's like. What's the day in the life of a contractor like? How do you do tractor files? How I do recruiting, which might be different from somebody else. But it goes across everything. And then along those lines, I also do consulting work on the side. I'm actually really excited. Shout out to Moshe Laser and Big Slab Trucking. He was a former, I guess he's still a continuing consulting partner of mine, but he just stood up his first 6 runs in the Memphis and Olive Branch area.
Nice.
Congratulations. I think I met him at the Linehaul Summit last summer, just thinking about getting in.
Yeah, and Sonny Ali was another former client of mine. He's up and running, and he's crushing it up in like Connecticut and Massachusetts, so he's doing really well up there. I've had a couple other customers who we haven't found the perfect routes for yet, but we're still looking. I will say that the market is very interesting right now if you're looking to buy runs. There are there's a lot of demand for people wanting to get into the space and wanting to get into line haul. So I think it's a good time to look at either acquiring more runs or disposing of runs if you're looking to raise some capital. I don't know how much growth necessarily there is going to be organically within FedEx this year. I think there's going to be a lot more consolidation. So if you can find the right business and opportunities to bolt on a couple runs to your operation, say in KCMO or Lenexa, because you want to expand there, then you should definitely take those opportunities to do so.
Alex, if somebody wants to reach out to you for your consulting services, how do they do that?
They can reach out to me directly. Probably the easiest way is to DM me on Facebook Messenger under the line haul, under any of the different FedEx websites groups. I think there's 4 of them now or something like that. I mean, obviously they can reach out to you and Emily at Routing for Success or at AP Finance. I mean, you guys are. I don't know of a better place to go if you're trying to get loans on used tractors right now. So, I mean, you guys make life easier for a lot of contractors. Or you can reach out to Route Consultants and talk to either Josh Gregory or any of the brokers there. They know how to get a hold of me. Or you can, join me every other week for our podcast that we have at, I think it's at 2:30 Mountain, which would be 4:30 Eastern. It takes me a little while to figure that out. But it's a lot of fun. We have good conversations. We have a different topic every week. And then we sometimes get some oddball questions of talking about, who the Bears are going to draft at number 9. What are the Blackhawks going to do with Connor Bedard next year? Who's going to be his line mates? So won't talk about that much. I'm not, that's just not my sport, but football, hockey, World Cup soccer, no politics. I'll stay away from politics.
Well, that is safe right now. So we have a few questions to wrap up with today. We're calling them our 3 to Thrive in FedEx. So are you ready, Alex?
Yes, I'm ready.
What was one of your most worthwhile investments that you have made into your FedEx business?
Wow. I think one of the most worthwhile investments, I think the biggest thing is actually investing in the managers of my business, allowing me to actually take a step back and think strategically about how I want to grow my business and have my business actually work for me instead of me working in my business was a real reason why I've been able to grow and expand and being successful and really think about, okay, how am I going to improve my safety score? How am I going to improve the efficiency? How am I going to do this metric or that metric? When I was doing the recruiting myself, when I was managing HR benefits myself, no, those are not my skills and my abilities. I'm a finance geek. That's where I grew up with. And so like running numbers is where, I did the best. But, having an HR manager, she works for me 30 hours a week. It's part-time, but she's taken so much off my plate that allows me to focus on my business and how I'm going to grow it. And that was the biggest investment I've made. And when you can grow to that point, be willing to take a little bit less money in your business, or understand that you're going to reduce your margins a little bit, to understand that you can then actually work more on your business, not in your business, and that allows you to grow. And everybody should think about it this way: you want to have your SG&A being about 4%. So if your pay and your manager pay and your HR manager pay is less than 4%, then you have the ability to invest in more. And so like one thing I did about a year and a half ago was I hired somebody to assist me with payroll, so I don't have to do payroll anymore. And so that's given me more free time to work on my business. And so I do everything from, I look at every single run that gets populated on Route Consultants or on KR Capital or Amanda Bryant or on Biz Buy Sell. I look at all those runs looking for opportunities to, if I want to grow or if I want to redirect Moshe to buying this business in Memphis, or, assist Sonny with buying businesses in Connecticut, or what you have. I'm looking to either try to grow my business or grow somebody else's business. And so that's been the best investment I've made.
Oftentimes in failure, let me try that question again. I'm reading it and I mixed up the words. We'll edit this out. Oftentimes failure in business is the greatest teacher. Do you have a favorite failure, and what did you learn from it?
Favorite failure. Yeah, I mean, I think the worst failure I've had was being so worried about not having drivers that I employed drivers that I wasn't very sure about. Guys that, I didn't know how safe they were on the road, or somebody who was, constantly giving me heartache about, following safety procedures and rules. Like I had a driver have a catastrophic accident a couple of years ago, and that really kind of, hammered home to me that, I need to protect my business. And if that means that I need to let go of somebody and take the risk of having a service or availability failures, then that's going to be the best thing for my business instead of having that catastrophic failure. The last thing you want is have somebody wreck a $150,000 tractor. That's just, that leaves a big sticky. So that was the biggest failure. I will say that we have a practice within my company of looking at mistakes and not looking at them as something that's a fireable expense, but looking at them as a teaching moment. So, with me and my 4 managers, I'm constantly saying, okay, think about this. I want you to independently come up with a solution on how to solve this problem. And if it's not the way I would have solved it, we'll talk about it. And if it's not what I want, it's not what my intent is, then that's a question of either I'm not doing a good enough job of making sure they understand what my intent is, or what I evaluate them on objectively. So with my 3 managers, I look at them as I evaluate them on their service, their availability, and their maintenance track records. I don't worry about their driver retention or recruiting. That's on me and my HR manager, but I'll evaluate my dispatching and maintenance managers on those metrics. And so if they are not doing or not achieving the objectives that I want to achieve, then it's either a question on I haven't been clear enough with them, or if I have been clear enough with them, then working through their decision-making tree to get to the right solution. So it's constantly trying to train and teach your managers to be more independent, because if they're constantly calling you for decisions, then that goes back to the original topic of then you're not working on your business, you're working in your business. And as you need to think of yourself as a president or as a CEO of your company and think about how am I going to grow my business? Because let me tell you, your business is scalable. Like if you have strong managers in place, you can run it from 10 tractors or you can run it with 50 tractors. It's just a function of you working on your business and figuring out, okay, how am I going to organically grow? How am I going to get additional capital so I can buy more tractors or buy more runs or acquire more runs to grow it up to that 50 tractor place? And every contractor should have a goal of getting up to 50 tractors. That's my goal. Someday I want to have 50 tractors.
I love it. Last question, a little bit lighter than the last one. What is your favorite part about being a FedEx contractor?
It's the other contractors and drivers. It's working with them and hearing from them on a daily basis. It's getting, text messages or emails from my drivers telling me they really appreciate working for me. The other day, I had the pleasure and the honor of actually awarding two of my drivers with a FedEx Humanitarian Award, and that was really special.
What did
two
they
of my
do?
drivers,
Let's hear the story.
Yeah, so on two different incidences, two of my drivers came upon accident scenes, and they stopped, blocked traffic, rendered aid, called the emergency medical services and first responders, got them to the scene, stayed with the accident victims until the first responders showed up, and in both cases, saved the lives of a couple people who were in horrific accidents.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So I submitted both of those drivers up to FedEx. FedEx acknowledged that what they had done was it was deserving of a humanitarian award, and so that was awesome. Having two drivers who recognized and did something selfless. They weren't expecting to get an award. They weren't expecting to get the recognition. They just saw civilians or pedestrians on the road in need of help, and they stopped, blocked traffic, and rendered aid. To me, that's what truck drivers are about. If you think about it, at the end of the day, our country doesn't move forward without truck drivers. They transport everything, water, food, perishable items, clothing, it all gets to your store or to your front door because of truck drivers.
That's amazing.
Alex,
Congratulations to them.
that is really cool. Any other questions you have for Alex today, Jake?
Dude, those answers were fire. I kept on thinking what our first little intro is going to be and clipping. And I kept on thinking, oh, that's going to be clipped. 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 Those are really good.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. This is a lot of fun. I would love to be back on, whenever you want. There's so many more topics we can talk about.
So I said I had 12 more planned for today and we didn't get there. So we'll have you back on again, Alex.
And I can't wait to see what this whole FedEx One initiative looks like and, where we're going from here. So I'm excited. So
Awesome.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.